All right, it is time for a Week 15 edition of the RotoWire Sports Betting Podcast, sponsored, as always, by the the great folks over at BetMGM, America's Sportsbook. Make sure you use our promo code BETROTO, BETROTO. You can use that on the BetMGM app. You can use that to bet at betmgm.com. That will make your first bet up to $1,000 completely risk-free. So again, make sure you use that promo code BETROTO. Very, very important for us. Very important for BetMGM. John, how are you doing? We are back finally to having all 32 teams in action this week. None of this bye week nonsense.
Yeah, feels good. Last week definitely tripped me up as far as getting over the finish line for the playoffs for a couple of different spots in the Roto Vegas League. I missed the wild card by 8 points. And like on a human level, we are professionals. We are, we do this fantasy football stuff for a living. But I made a lineup error. I traveled last weekend, and it cost me. So you know what? I have no one to blame for myself on that one. And I'm ashamed. I'm wearing the shame. You got to wear it. There are other spots where I want to match up by 0.6 points to get me over the hump into the playoffs. So like, it's all good, all things considered, but it will sting. I was hoping to use my Vegas winnings to begin fronting what I'm going to owe for the steak league dinner, because that is going to be a bloodbath, and people are so out for blood in those Roto steak dinners. I felt awful for the baseball buyers last time around. Not that I wasn't horribly contributing to their till, but there we were.
Hey, it is what it is. As Woody Harrelson in True Detective Season 1 said, a man's game charges a man's price.
That's a good. That reminds me. I once a year I watch True Detective. I think
so good.
Possibly over this holiday season. Nothing gets you in the spirit more than the Yellow King.
Yes, I usually have a few cocktails, whether it's at Thanksgiving or Christmas, and I go on like this deranged rant of like, no, it's the best season of TV ever. You don't understand, as I've like the furthest thing from a TV critic. But anyway, Week 15, John, we're coming in hot here. You might have had some snafus in your fantasy leagues. I missed out on a $3,000 prize by 16 total fantasy points on the season. So I'm kind of hurting here as well. But we went 2 for 2 on our parlays last week. The afternoon delight parlay hit in smashing fashion. My four-legger also hit as well. So we'll try to keep that momentum going as we jump in on Week 15. We will not talk Thursday night. By the time you hear this podcast, that game will probably be in the midst. So we'll stay away from Niners Seahawks, but that still leaves us with 15 games, 3 of which, John, arrive on Saturday. We get Colts Vikings in the early window. We get Ravens Browns as a standalone game in the afternoon, and then Dolphins Bills capping it off at night. Which of these 3 games on Saturday are you most looking forward to watching?
I feel like Dolphins Bills has the biggest train wreck potential. Like any game that Indianapolis plays in is like inherently a train wreck, but yes. I feel like what we know about this Dolphins team and everything that's been said all week about their inability to deal with any sort of weather conditions, needing to bring heaters with them to Los Angeles of all places. And now you go up to Buffalo in December, and like, it's kind of like this beautiful parallel from earlier in the season where the Dolphins kind of had the last laugh against the Bills because of when and where that game was played. Is like 100 degrees on the field, like so many snaps, such a high paced game. And, the Dolphins come out on top, and the Bills were just like, they left it all on the field. They were exhausted afterward. This time around, now we have the Dolphins going up there. There's been some injuries in to the key skill spots for this Dolphins team. And I think we're going to get a bit of an answer to the question on Tua, and can he really step up in these type of spots? Because I think with the wind, even if you reverse the film and we have Tua looking like a right-handed quarterback, I don't know if he has what it takes to rip it through like 15, 16 mile an hour constant winds, 25 mile an hour gusts. Like those could just hang up in the air for guys like Jordan Poyer to, pick off, take to the house.
Yeah, you said it. It feels like kind of a complete reversal of what we saw in Week 3, where it felt like Miami really benefited from the weather down in South Beach. I mean, that was a game too where if you dig into it, I mean, Baltimore won basically every metric. I mean, they ran like 3 times as many plays. They won time of possession. That it was just a game that Miami stole early on, and they had a couple of those. But, I think this now becomes a big time kind of reckoning game for Tua, who's coming off of easily the worst game of his career, possibly his entire life. When you go back to Alabama and his high school career, I don't know how he was in middle school or Pop Warner.
At St. Louis High School in Hawaii.
Yeah, right. I don't know if he ever went 10 of 28 at the high school level. I would guess not.
Doubtful.
But it feels like there's now been like multiple reversals on Tua. Like, I was really down on him coming into the year. I had to kind of switch my opinion midway through, and all of a sudden now I'm feeling somewhat vindicated. But I think the weather is a huge factor here. 28 degrees, potential for snow. I saw 12-mile-per-hour winds at the forecast when I checked about an hour ago in Buffalo. I read that this will be the coldest game of Tua's life. He has never started in a game where the kickoff temperature has been below 36 degrees. So this is a kind of an unprecedented situation for him. Looking at the total in this game, sitting at 44, Buffalo has cashed the under in 9 of the last 11 games. They continue to win, but once again, last week against the Jets, it's like they opened that game with 5 straight punts. Josh Allen had a couple questionable throws, kind of early career Josh Allen throws that just get away from him. So it feels to me we're on like week 6 in a row where we're saying, yes, the Bills are good. Nobody's questioning that, but you still want to see one of those dominant steamroller performances.
You do. And this is a prime spot for it. We'll see if they can take advantage. I thought that last week would have been a great spot for them as well. Although, the Jets do have a very good defense, but I mean, it was Mike White. They got after Mike White. They hospitalized Mike White. But he's okay. So we can joke, but
yeah.
I do agree with the sentiment where like it basically is like the Chiefs game, maybe the point of demarcation where it's been a little while since the Bills have really looked like the team that they're supposed to be.
I think so. And even the final score in that game, I think it was 24-20. So it wasn't like a domination, but considering the opponent, considering it was on the road, yes, I think that is kind of when they hit their peak, but they deserve credit, that they got tripped up by the Jets, that they had some other kind of wacky games in there, but for the most part, they're finding ways to win. It hasn't always been pretty, but they're the 1 seed in the AFC right now. So you can only take so much credit away from them. Let's go to the lines overall here, and we'll continue to work in, some Colts Vikings talk, some Ravens Browns talk as well. But what are the lines to you that maybe are a little bit too high right now over at BetMGM?
So leading things off, I would say the Packers, and it's maybe I'm a little bit a victim of the prisoner of the moment when it comes to the Baker Mayfield thing, but I mean, for him to basically get off the plane and do what he did last Thursday night was phenomenal. It was like one of the cooler moments. I know that Baker's not the most likable guy in the world, but I mean, I thought that was like one of the cooler parts of this entire season. And, the Rams, I had said it previously, like they looked frisky, at least a little bit against Seattle the week prior. Like
they were frisky adjacent. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So there had been long stretches, maybe months even at that point where we couldn't have said even that about this Rams team. So there's something going on. Maybe they can play a little bit of spoiler here down the stretch. I know the Packers are coming off the bye. The offense looked great last time out. That was against the Bears. They always own the Bears, and the Bears defense is just, I don't know, CFL level. I mean, it's pathetic right now what they're rolling out there.
The Packers were trailing that game going into the fourth quarter. I mean, the offense looked good at the end, but it was still a classic Packers first half letdown.
Yeah, see? So I just feel like even though it's at Lambeau and this is an LA team going up there, I just can't quite trust the Packers to win by more than a touchdown, even against the Rams. So that one sticks out to me. I think the other night game over the weekend, the Commanders, love the Commanders, have been betting them all year and to great success, but 4.5 points is the most they've been favored by at home this season. They just, it's kind of weird because their last game was against the Giants and they tied. The Giants, meanwhile, in the middle of that, got completely pantsed by the Eagles last week. Washington was on a bye. So now they're at home. They're coming off the bye, but I still can't quite get there. I think that this is more of a field goal game. I like Washington to win. I think the Giants are really, really starting to like show their true colors here as we get further into the season, but can't quite trust Washington with that number. And the Broncos, I mean, what else needs to be said? You just can't trust the Broncos as favorites, basically, is what I'm getting at with that one.
Broncos Cardinals, just very mean job by the schedule makers. Like I just don't even want to think about this game. We'll get into it at some point, I suppose, because it is our professional obligation. But my goodness, man, especially if it ends up being Ripien for Denver. I mean, what are we even doing here? But yeah, I had the Commanders on my list as well. I'm with you. Everything you said makes sense. I think the Commanders win this game. They have the benefit of being the far healthier team. They have the benefit of playing at home, which they did not have 2 weeks ago. And biggest of all, they're coming off of the bye, whereas the Giants are coming off of like their worst beatdown of the season, where they got even more beat up injury-wise. I mean, Saquon Barkley played 20 snaps in that game. And if he's not at 100%, I feel like the Giants have no chance to win. But I also don't think the Commanders, for as fun and frisky as they've been for the last 2 months, they haven't earned this level of respect. And I mean, 4.5 is not that big of a number, but when you're talking about these two teams, like this should never be more than 3.5 to me. I think it could easily be 3. So I like the Commanders to win. I think we get like a 21-23 type of game. But I'm with you. And I talked to Jeff about this one on the XM show last night. We were in lockstep too. I mean, it's just kind of we don't love either of these teams. You give a slight edge to Washington for a few reasons, but I don't see this, being a handed win for the Commanders. I have a note on the Chiefs here. Is the line too high? I understand why it's 14, and I'll tell you this: I'm taking the Chiefs minus 14. I'm likely marching to my own death there, much like I did when I took the Cowboys against this Texans team last week. But at the same time, it kind of feels to me like the Texans had their almost game of the year last week. It's really hard to see them being up for another big time game like this. Especially after losing last week, ultimately, despite playing really well and keeping that game close. The Chiefs go up 27-0 on Denver. They somehow don't cover that game. Mahomes throws 3 picks. It was kind of a disaster second half. KC holds on, no harm, no foul there. But it feels like there's just no way that those two events are happening again. So, I know a lot of the numbers indicate, double-digit favorites this season are just 7 and 14. ATS. That is the worst ATS mark for those situations in over 20 years, John. So we do need to keep that in mind. Patrick Mahomes as more than a 7-point favorite on the road, 8-0 straight up. That's great. 1-7 ATS in those situations. So there are a lot of numbers that point to the Texans as the correct pick here, but I just can't do it. I think this is a really good spot for the Chiefs to bounce back. And I don't see the Texans, especially with no Dameon Pierce, being able to control the clock in the way that they did last week against Dallas.
Yeah, Arian Foster, unlikely to be walking through that door for
possible,
Houston.
But unlikely.
Right. So we'll leave it at that. But yeah, I mean, point well taken. In my column, I also kind of had a similar line of thinking, or at least had to bring it up that since 2020, Chiefs, when they're heavy road favorites, 2-5 against the spread, by 7 or more points, going back to that sample. I think I read that correctly. So that's problematic. Obviously, the Texans did what they did last week, almost won outright as 17.5-point dogs. But yeah, can they do it again? Is the big question. But I think I'm just going to lean with the numbers, and I feel equally sick about it. On the other side, like anytime that you are checking yes on the Texans, like you do just feel a little bit icky. But
yeah, it's like that box pops up that makes you confirm your age.
Yeah, it's like, I shouldn't be here.
No, you're right. To put a bow on Rams Packers, by the way, and then we could probably move on from that one. That's the Monday night game this week. I'm on the Packers here. I don't love the number. I would love it a lot more if BetMGM could give it a little nudge, down to 6.5. It's hard for me to imagine Green Bay losing this game, but the Rams are well coached. The Rams could end up getting Aaron Donald back in this game. That is a significant concern for me because the Packers offensive line has been much shakier this year than it's been in years past. The running game has kind of, come and gone throughout the week. And for what it's worth, Aaron Donald did not practice today on Thursday, but has not been ruled out of this game. Aaron Rodgers at night, John, 41-29-2 ATS in his career. Aaron Rodgers at night as a 6-point favorite or more, 22-3 straight up, 17-7-1 ATS. And you could make the argument that maybe this might be like the worst Packers team that he's been on. Talent wise, it's not, but just in terms of how this year has gone. So you can judge him with or without Devontae Adams. I get all that. But the Packers take care of business in these situations, and they're still playing for something, unlike the Rams. And the last thing I'll say about this is, where can the Packers be exploited? It's on the ground. Can the Rams run the ball? I don't think they can.
No, that's very, very good point. I mean, the run game has been mostly absent basically since, I don't know, Todd Gurley. So
yeah,
it's,
I was gonna say Eric Dickerson. Yeah, Jerome Bettis.
Who could forget? But
Steven Jackson.
Oh man, sorry to our friends in St. Louis. But yeah, no, I mean, it's not like the Rams have a whole lot going for them, but I'm betting on some late season frisk, and that's basically the extent of it. Because the numbers are staggeringly pointing in the other direction, and I think you're wise to call on them. But you know what? I'm taking the plunge on the Rams.
Hey man, dogs are covering at a 55% clip this season. So, you might be in the right on that one. A lot of things have not gone to plan this year, to say the least. All right, let's go to the other side. Lines that are a little too low to you at BetMGM.
So let's see here. Some ones that, I mean, could you make the argument that the Jets should be favored by a little bit more? I know we're seeing like split action. I don't know. That
one's moved a little bit. It's up to 1.5. It's been at 1 most of the week.
Okay, so that one is definitely tricky. I feel like, again, kind of like how we introed the Bills game, I feel like I would be comfortable with the Bills 7.5, 8 even in this spot, even though they're not blowing the doors off of teams. And I also feel like the Vikings, I think, deservedly were underdogs, obviously, last week, but this is Indianapolis at the end of the day. Like, the Vikings might not be as good as their record suggests, but Indianapolis is every bit, if not worse, than their record would leave you to believe. We'll see if the Vikings can kind of like shore up their pass defense. I think if the pass rush gets home, Matt Ryan has no ability to do anything about that, and maybe Fumble Watch is back on. I feel like the Vikings, only -4 at home in this setup, that feels like a little bit low. I'd be comfortable with them probably up to 5.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you on that, but that's the first one that stuck out to me. Vikings, by the way, I mean, they're like 26th in pressure rate. It hasn't been fantastic, but that Colts offensive line has crumbled this season. To me, this number feels too low. I'm with you. It could be 5, could be it could be 5.5 or 6, and I wouldn't think that's crazy. I understand why it's 4, but Minnesota's at home. They played better at home this season, of course, with the exception of that Dallas game. To me, this total feels a little bit high, 47.5 at BetMGM. I question whether the Colts can kind of hold up their end of the bargain. And even last week, I mean, Minnesota, Kirk Cousins very quietly had perhaps the quietest 435-yard passing game in NFL history. It did not feel like he threw for that many yards. Obviously, Jefferson, you set the franchise receiving record and you still lose by 2 scores. That's kind of wild. So I like the under on 47.5. I like Minnesota to win this game. I think the case for the Colts is, 1, they're coming off of a bye. Minnesota is not, of course. 2, they played Philly about as well as anybody has all year, and they beat the Chiefs. I mean, that was a long, long time ago. That was a different coach. Everything was different at that point in the year, but they have been up for at least a couple of these big games this season. So I understand it. I do have a couple notes on Minnesota. They are 19-6 ATS at home after a loss. That's after a straight up loss. Since 2015, that is the best mark in the NFL. And they have 12 consecutive wins as a favorite, which is the longest active streak in the NFL. So as they've done all year, they've won the games that they're supposed to win, and they've lost the games that they're supposed to lose, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect for them. That really sums them up pretty nicely. So again, this is a game that they're supposed to win. I think that they will.
Yeah, I like the Vikings, like 27-20, something like that. Maybe goes just under. Teams that stuck out to me as maybe just a little bit low here. And, please correct me if this is just my anti-Jaguars bias speaking, but I think the Cowboys could be bigger than 4-point favorites. I think maybe that's a slight overreaction to how lazily they played for 58 minutes last week against the Texans. Obviously, the Jaguars, coming off of a huge win, exercised a decade's worth of demons in Nashville last week, but they were well on their way to getting blown out of that game, and they won the turnover battle 4-0. That to me is just not really sustainable. I think, if you take away even 2 of those Titans turnovers, I think Tennessee has a pretty good chance of winning that game. So yes, it was a convincing win for Jacksonville. It was huge. All of a sudden we have kind of a low-key race for the AFC South title, but some flukiness involved there. Derrick Henry fumbling at the end of a big play directly into the arms of Josh Allen, for example. Not stuff you could depend on week to week. So that's one where I do like Dallas. We know better, I think, than to trust Jacksonville in these situations. We've been duped before.
Of course, I'm
only
ready to get duped again personally, but
they're 2 weeks removed from losing by 26 to the Lions. All right. We do have to keep that in mind. That is the worst defense in the NFL, and they scored 14 points. I'm looking at this Cincinnati Tampa Bay line as well. This is in the late window on Sunday. Bengals 3.5-point favorites. Bucks are at home here. This is the second week in a row that the Bucks are underdogs, and it's just the second time all season that they've been underdogs. That's like one of the wildest stats to me. The Bengals are 18-3 ATS in their last 21 games. Goes without saying that is far and away the best number of any team in that sample. Brady, 10-1 ATS as a home dog in his career. Obviously, context has completely changed now versus most of those games being with Belichick and New England. And another crazy stat for you, John. After facing the 49ers this season, teams are 1-11 straight up. I don't know what that means. Do you just get beat up?
Yes, that is very similar. A couple of years ago, there was a great stat about teams that the week after they played Navy. So they would most of the time they beat Navy, but holy smokes, they just have the week-long hangover of having to make that many tackles on the ground. So I feel like there must be that similar level of just punishment that is doled out. And I think we can safely say that the Buccaneers took plenty of punishment last week.
Yes, exactly. So I understand the number. I think the questionable status of T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Trey Hendrickson breaking his wrist last week, all of that is baked in here. So I totally get that. I think if Hayden Hurst is also out, that's a big part of this offense. I think if Higgins and Boyd were healthy, if we knew they were going to play in this game, maybe that number ticks up a little bit, and perhaps it will by the end of the week. But right now, I love the Bengals on the road here. I think you could pitch it as maybe a trip up spot for Cincinnati, but what has Tampa Bay done at this point to earn any respect, any benefit of the doubt? I don't know what it is.
Nothing's working for Tampa Bay. Like the offense is totally busted. They basically the offensive line, we could have foreseen it a little bit, like coming into the season with Ali Marpet retiring, Ryan Jensen getting hurt in training camp. But at the same time, Brady is so reluctant to do anything other than get the ball out of his hands as quickly as possible. And that just creates a broken offense with no downfield threat whatsoever. And what does that do? That allows the defense to creep up, shrinks the field, limits the run after catch ability because there's no space to operate in. And the run game sucks, whether it's Fournette or Rachaad White, that it's just not really getting the job done. So that puts Brady in an even tougher spot. And they have Brady dropping back, 40, 45 plus times a game. And it just with such limited results, it kind of looks like an air raid box score where you have to use the passing game as like an extension of the run game. And it just creates all these short passes, and it just doesn't actually like move the chains, get them into scoring territory. And when they do, they're not really great there either. So it's not working. I am worried about the Hendrickson thing long-term, although he's kind of a psycho. So like he might even play. Has he even been ruled out yet officially?
I don't think he has, not officially. No, I know
he plays barehanded. So, I mean,
you can see that they might just club it up.
Yeah, that guy's a menace. I like him. But beyond that, how did he land at Florida Atlantic, by the way? Like that's, but either way, I almost feel uncomfortable with how much I like the Bengals. Like very, very strongly considered making them my best bet second week in a row. Like you said, they've been killer against the spread for, going back to last year. So I'm nervous at how much I like the Bengals in this spot.
Yeah, I understand it. I mean, it's always rough going on the road this late in the season. I obviously Tom Brady at some point he's going to stop losing that like cachet that he's built or stop having that cachet that he's built up his entire career. But all these like Tom Brady's and underdog stats could be a little daunting. That is for sure. I want to throw one more at you, and I have this as a question mark. I'm not sure that the line is too high, or excuse me, too low. But the New Orleans Saints, they're given 4 at home to the Falcons. This will be Desmond Ritter's first NFL start. This will be his first regular season snap on the first play from scrimmage for the Falcons. Look, I'm not trying to offer an endorsement of the Saints. Don't misconstrue this. I'm looking right into the camera. I do not think the Saints are good, but I also don't think the Falcons are good. And this is a really tough spot to make your first NFL start at the Superdome. It's one of the few true home field advantages, even if the team and the defense isn't as good as it's been in years past. So, where do you come in on this? Is 4 about right, or should the Saints be getting a little bit more benefit of the doubt here going against an unproven rookie?
I like the Saints at this number. I suppose it could be higher. I mean, there is train wreck potential coming from Ritter, because not only is he a rookie making his first start, but it's not like he's the most highly touted rookie. Now, on the other side of that, longtime starter at Cincinnati, of course, took the program to new heights. Was impressive and everything like that, but I don't think that there's a lot of weapons around him, and I don't think that he can. Like, I know that he has a good 40 time, but I worry about the frame. Like, if Ritter relies on the legs, I think he's going to get just mashed by some NFL linebackers. So I think that therefore he's going to be hemmed into being a pocket passer essentially with no one to throw to. And it's like you said, Saints, even though they stink, people are still going to show up in New Orleans. Low key, like, there's some serious vitriol in this Falcons Saints rivalry. I don't think it gets like a ton of national pub, but it's pretty palpable down here and down in New Orleans as well. And I think the Saints just kind of want to, knock the Falcons down another peg. And I think this is a prime spot to do it. So I'm all over the Saints at this number. And therefore, I think it could even be higher, and I'd still feel good about it.
Both of these teams are alive in the division, by the way. Like, this is not a meaningless game. It feels like it should be, but it's not at all. And, if the Saints had not just completely given away that game to the Bucs 2 weeks ago, we would have had a 4-way tie for first place right now. And look, it's not sewn up. I mean, Tampa Bay could not win another game the rest of the way. That would not be shocking the way that they've looked. So that there is a decent amount on the line here. We should mention, you talked about Ritter potentially getting beat up. That's always a concern, especially for a guy who hasn't had any reps. They signed Logan Woodside. He'll be the backup. Had they not done that, it may have been Felipe Franks taking snaps for the Atlanta Falcons in an emergency situation.
Do you remember, I guess it was a Thursday night game last year when I think the Falcons were playing the Patriots and Matt Ryan went out. So they had to turn to not only in Josh Rosen, but also Felipe Franks in the same game. And I think they both threw pick sixes.
I mean, that's what you're getting. I mean, Felipe Franks is a tight end. We have him listed on the quarterback depth chart at RotoWire because they just don't have a third quarterback, and he would be the guy. But yes, it was funny. There's the article in The Athletic that broke down the whole Mariota debacle, which, I mean, whatever, man, not super cool, just leaving the team. But there was like this just kind of little throwaway passage that was like, Felipe Franks would be the emergency quarterback. He's attempted one pass and then was moved to tight end. It's like, I like to picture him like the coaches saw him throw one pass. They're like, nope, you're done. You're a tight end.
Yeah, I've seen enough. Franks has a cannon, but like has no idea where it's going, and is not good at like in his dotage. Once his NFL days are over, like he can just go to long pass competitions in the fields of Florida somewhere where he's from, and win $40 doing that.
Yes, exactly. I am excited to see Ritter, though. I'm not convinced that it's going to be a stellar performance. I think missing Kyle Pitts is like bigger now than it was with Mariota. I think having him back and a chance to kind of unlock something with him with Ritter would have been really fun. But like you said, they don't have the weapons outside of Drake London. So I like the Saints to win this game. It's probably going to be ugly, probably going to be relatively low scoring, but I'm on Saints -4. John, we double locked the Cincinnati Bengals last week at 5.5. I called it my lock of the year. I think I even said it was the lock of the decade. And it came through for us. Our first double lock all season. I felt great about it. It was really, despite T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd playing 3 total snaps in that game, it was never really in doubt. Cincinnati essentially led by multiple scores the whole game. So we hit the double lock. We don't really have a read situation here. So do we have to go back to the every other?
Let's tag team the read this time around. Yeah, but it is funny that we literally don't know what to do when both of us get it right.
Yeah, unprecedented situation. We haven't encountered this. All right, I'll start it off.
Beautiful.
Kick off week 15 of the NFL season with the king of sportsbooks. Sign up with BetMGM using our bonus code BETROTO. That's BETROTO, BETROTO. And your first wager at BetMGM is risk-free up to $1,000. Visit BetMGM.com or check out the BetMGM app for terms and conditions.
Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Michigan, Mississippi, Nevada, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Puerto Rico, Tennessee, Virginia, Washington, D.C., West Virginia, Wyoming, or Ontario only. Must be 21 years or older to wager, 19 or older in Ontario.
This is a new customer offer only. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards are issued as non-withdrawable free bets or site credits. Free bets expire 7 days from issuance. This excludes MDPs, Michigan Disassociated Persons. Please, we're begging you, gamble responsibly.
Let's see here. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, D.C., Kansas, Louisiana, Nevada, Wyoming, or Virginia, 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-GAMBLER in Indiana, Maryland, New Jersey, or West Virginia, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Call or text the Tennessee Red Line at 800-889-9789 in Tennessee, or call 1-888-777-9696 in Mississippi.
In Ontario, if you have questions or concerns about your gambling or someone close to you, please contact Connects Ontario at 1-866-531-2600 to speak to an advisor free of charge. Sports betting is void in Georgia, Hawaii, Ohio, and Utah, as well as other states where prohibited. Promotional offers not available in Nevada and New York. Bang. All right. Flew right through that.
Easy money.
Easy money. All right, let's get into the games we have not talked about. Then we'll reveal our parlays of the week. I got a 6.5 point teaser dialed up that I love. We got some friendly numbers on the teaser this week, so we'll get into that. We'll give in our best bets at the end of the pod as well. But John, we have coincidentally not talked about the afternoon game on Saturday. That is Ravens-Browns. We know for a fact Lamar Jackson will not be playing in this game. They kind of left the door open earlier this week. Never really seemed like he had all that great of a chance to play. However, we do know that it will not be Anthony Brown because Tyler Huntley has cleared concussion protocol as of Thursday for the Baltimore Ravens, who are 3-point dogs at the Deshaun Watson Cleveland Browns.
So I am all over the Ravens in this spot. First up, just get that out.
Okay.
No
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, just spoilers out the door. Here we go. I felt all along this week, just based on Huntley's practice participation, that things were trending towards him being able to clear protocol, be ready to go. Obviously, you'd prefer to have Lamar Jackson, but I think Tyler Huntley can make this offense work. And I was very, very much encouraged by the way that the run game got going once J.K. Dobbins returned last week. I thought he looked great. And I think it's important to note that the Ravens were able to do that with absolutely no passing threat whatsoever, because Huntley went out and, you have Anthony Brown, a guy who may or may not should be on an NFL roster. So the Steelers knew what the Ravens were doing, and they couldn't do anything about it. And they have, in my opinion, a better run defense by a decent stretch than this Cleveland Browns team. So I feel like they're going to be able to get the ground game going. The Ravens were able to that first time around against Cleveland as well. And they were much more shorthanded in the backfield in that particular matchup, if I remember correctly. That was like a lot of Kenyon Drake, if I remember right. So I feel like the Ravens are going to be able to do that, just just have these long methodical drives and get it done. I think it's huge that Ronnie Stanley is back. If they can get Kevin Zeitler back, then the offensive line really kind of looks pristine in this setup. You wonder if they can do just enough in the passing game to get it done. And then on the flip side, Ravens getting healthier on defense. Marcus Williams got back last week. They forced 3 turnovers. Trubisky, obviously a lot more mistake prone than Deshaun Watson is. But I'm not sold after these 2 games. And again, it's just 2 games. And he was, we're talking about almost a 2-year-long layoff for Watson. But are we sure that Watson's going to really look like Deshaun Watson for the rest of this season? I'm just not. And I'm not sure that a game against the Ravens is going to be the one where he does. So I like the Ravens covering this one, and I like them on the money line.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you, man. I kind of made a contingency pick in my article this week, and at the time that I published it, we didn't know who would be under center for the Ravens, and I said if Tyler Huntley's under center, I think they win this game. And the one thing that maybe gives me a little bit of pause is I do think the Ravens should have lost last week. I think
Fair.
Mitch Trubisky throwing 3 interceptions at the Baltimore 10, the Baltimore 9, and the Baltimore goal line was a big issue. I think if you just get a field goal on one of those, they probably win that game. So I am a little bit wary of, yes, Baltimore was able to rack up over 200 yards rushing on a pretty good Pittsburgh Steelers defense, especially when they have their guys healthy. But at the same time, I think if Kenny Pickett doesn't get like WWE body slammed by Roquan Smith early in that game, I really do think Pittsburgh wins, and maybe that colors our opinion a little bit of the Ravens. But no, I'm with you on Watson, man. I'm 100% sure that he's not going to look like Houston Deshaun Watson this year. Can he get back there next year? Sure, absolutely. I would say there's a pretty good chance he does, but he looked really, really bad against the Texans. He looked marginally better last week against Cincinnati. Still makes a lot of mistakes, doesn't quite look comfortable out there. And beyond that, far more concerning is the fact that Nick Chubb has been held to 80 yards or fewer, and in most cases, significantly fewer in 4 of the last 5 games. So like if they can't get Nick Chubb going, I think this is a grinded out type of game, and that really plays to Baltimore's favor.
Yeah. So this is going to be one where looks like my camera might have frozen, but yeah, I believe that the playing in the mud is kind of like where the Ravens like to reside. So I feel like this game sets up nicely for that particular setup. And I will, again, I'm taking the Ravens in this spot on Saturday afternoon. I'm going to jump out, refresh the camera.
Okay.
I will be right back. So keep rocking. I'll be right back.
Oh no, we're good. We'll take a brief pause. No problem. All right, we're back.
And we're back.
There we go. All right. We will, of course, splice that out for our audio listeners. Let's see. Where do we want to go next here, John?
I want to talk about.
Okay,
I got one.
All right.
Eagles, Bears, 9 points. It's a lot of points.
It is.
Eagles have not been great on the road traditionally this year. Killed it last week. Divisional opponent, of course. But I mean, the Giants stood no chance. I think that was the game that I circled last week. Is like we're going to know right away if that's going to be a rock fight. Therefore, the Giants cover or the Eagles just blow the doors off of them. And it was obviously the latter. Bears coming off the bye, so you do feel better about Justin Fields being healthier, closer to full health here. And the way that he was playing before that shoulder injury was something that was going to be a problem for the rest of the league anytime that they face the Bears. But at the same time, you just also have to know that the Eagles are going to be able to kind of name their score in this one. So really it comes down to, can Fields kind of be Superman enough to keep them within 9 points? And I'm leaning yes on that one. But I feel icky about it, and I could certainly be convinced otherwise. But as it stands, Bears at home, getting 9 points, I think I just kind of have to take it just because of the number.
I'm on the Eagles this week, at least in my article and in staff picks. I think the argument against Philly is, they keep kind of coming through in these situations. Like everybody thought it was going to be a close game against Tennessee, 35-10. A lot of people were on the Giants to cover last week, 48-22. I mean, they put up 40, 35, and 48 in their last 3 games since that weird Colts game where they kind of won it on the Hurts keeper at the last second. So they are rolling right now, but a lot of the numbers do indicate that teams in the Eagles position tend to struggle in these type of matchups. I mean, teams with a 90% win percentage or better are 9-32-1 ATS. That's about a 22% cover rate in December in the last 20 years. So what do you think accounts for that? Like, is it just these good teams that either, kind of like the luck factor catches up with them, something to do with cold weather, looking ahead to the playoffs? Like that's just such a stark number.
Yeah. I think, the teams that are out of it and therefore, getting a ton of points they're running out of runway for the rest of their season, and therefore they take whatever big game they get as their Super Bowl essentially. So they pull out their best game. My like best example of that was 2007. I was there. Ravens against the Patriots, that Monday night game. Very, very close game. Terrible Ravens team. Obviously, a tremendous Patriots team. So that definitely kind of checks out where these teams that are gearing down, getting ready for the postseason, going up against a team that's very, very fired up. It bears out, like you said, it's 20 years of sample to suggest that these type of big numbers end up being a little bit trappy for the favorites. So yeah, I mean that kind of again leads me towards the Bears. Not going to feel great about it, not putting in my best bet or anything like that, but I'm definitely not just marking the Eagles and moving right on.
I do kind of like the over here, 48.5. It's a high number for an outdoor, potentially bad weather game in December, but Bears are the number one team in the league as far as cashing overs this season. And obviously Philly more than capable of scoring. And I think you're right about Justin Fields coming off the bye. He did miss a practice this week due to an illness, but was back in full capacity on Thursday. So it doesn't look like that's going to be an issue. But if they're able to kind of get him back to those design runs, I think that really opens things up for that offense. But we're going to agree to disagree on that. I'm rolling with the Eagles. You got the Bears +9 over at BetMGM. Let's backtrack real quick to Steelers-Panthers. This is another game in the noon window on Sunday. I don't have a ton of thoughts here. I mean, we're still waiting for updates on the Pittsburgh. Really hinges on that. Kenny Pickett still in concussion protocol. He was limited on Thursday. If Kenny Pickett plays in this game, I think that is obviously a big time benefit for the Steelers, which is not even that much of an endorsement of Kenny Pickett for me. It is just the fact that I don't want to see Mitch Trubisky out there. And there were even some inklings that maybe Mason Rudolph could weasel his way into this game.
I love the word choice there. Like that. Yeah. Mason Rudolph doesn't just simply like ascend the depth chart. He weasels his way up there.
He's a weasel.
He kind of is. So fair. Although, did I see Deontay Johnson clamoring for one Mason Rudolph, just saying give him a chance? I think that says more about just like if Kenny's out, don't do the Mitch thing again. No more of that. Like I think that he's just had it with Trubisky. Yep. So that I think it clearly Mason Rudolph has won this locker room. No, but this game, the first thing that comes to mind when I see the matchup is the spoof metal band Steel Panther. And that's about the extent of it. Not a whole lot else comes to mind here. That this is not a historic rivalry. No. I don't remember the last time that these two played. But Carolina, plucky. They play on a very thin margin for error, of course. That they're trying to shorten the game, but their defense is pretty nasty. They're getting after the passer. J.C. Horn is a stud. So I think defensively they're going to be able to cause some turnovers, especially if Pickett is not in there, and it is Trubisky or Mason Rudolph. And I don't think the Steelers, that offensive line is just such a problem for them. Like that, again, they probably shouldn't have lost last week, but they did. So they probably shouldn't lose here, but I think they will. I like the Panthers in this one, and I'm actually reasonably strong on that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems kind of crazy to say that about a Sam Darnold-led Panthers team, but to me, I think the the defenses in this game are close to a wash. Yeah, I think the Carolina defense is really good. Pittsburgh's defense is playing well, but they've kind of been in these messy games against bad offenses, so it has been a little bit difficult to tell, and they could not get a stop on the ground last week when they absolutely needed one against Baltimore. That was telling to me. I think the Steelers would love to play this game on offense in the way that Carolina does, whereas like Carolina can actually run the ball. They have multiple backs that could beat you. I mean, possibly 3 now with Raheem Blackshear looking okay last week, but Pittsburgh can't run the ball. Carolina can run the ball. I think, like I said, these defenses kind of cancel each other out. So I'm with you. I like Carolina to win this game. I think it's going to be really, really close. I mean, this could be like our 19-17 game of the week, where Pittsburgh, kind of pulls off a backdoor cover. But I do like
and it
Carolina
also
to
looks
win.
like 1917, like football being played back then.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, a little bit of a double entendre. And we should mention this game is sitting at Panthers 3 at BetMGM. We talked about Cowboys Jags. We don't need to go back into that one. I will say, since the start of last season, the Jags are 4-22 straight up when they allow 14 or more points. I think the Cowboys probably get to 14 in this game. So we'll see. Maybe they could keep it close, but not the greatest indication. Let's go to Lions Jets. We haven't really dug in on this game. This is a bit of a brain teaser for me, John. I have this down as my least confident pick in my pick'em league this week. It's going to be my 1-pointer. I'm rolling with the Jets. I'm weirdly confident that the Jets win, and yet when push comes to shove, like I can't move them up the board.
Yeah, no, that's a great way of putting it. Like it when you put it in the confidence context. But I just feel like the Lions, yes, that they did go into the Meadowlands earlier this season, back in November, get the win over the Giants. But I feel like when it comes to this Lions team, Jared Goff outside December playing against a great defense like the Jets have. Like this is not like being in dome conditions against the worst pass defense in football the way it was a week ago. It's very interesting to me that Jameson Williams is back and doing Jameson Williams stuff right away. Like it's like, oh yeah, there
literally
it is.
Right away.
Yeah, just unreal. That guy so dangerous. But I just feel like the Jets are like the worst type of matchup for this Lions team. And I think that even though the Jets offense isn't great, it seems to be working under Mike White. And I think that Mike White is going to be available for this one, at least last that I've seen. So that opens things up for Garrett Wilson. This is still a really bad Lions defense. So all of that leads to me to believe, and it's interesting that unnamed sportsbooks actually have the Lions favored, or at least they did earlier in the week. So this one's obviously very close, but I feel good about the Jets in this spot at home. I just think the defense ends up carrying the day. They get Goff out off his spot. And, once that happens, things just start to unravel from there for Detroit.
Yeah, I want to have faith in the Lions offense, but I think in this specific situation, going up against that Jets defense, and the Jets absolutely need this game. Not that the Lions don't, but I lean towards that ferocious Jets defense, trusting them more than I do Detroit. And I wish I could offer some lock of the week, sell your mother's house, take the money and put it on the Jets type of explanation here. But it just feels like this is one where these are very equal teams. They're very different teams, but ultimately equal. And I side with the team that is better outdoors and at home. And yeah, if Mike White makes it through this game, I really like the Jets. I think that's my main concern, is that he's not 100%, or he takes another hit to that midsection and all of a sudden things could unravel for the Jets fairly quickly. All right, we'll zoom through the rest of these. Cardinals, Broncos. I mean, my goodness, what the heck, man? Cardinals are 3-point dogs right now. They, of course, will not have Kyler Murray back at any point this year. He tore his ACL, if you somehow missed that, on Monday night. We don't really know what's going on in Denver either. Russell Wilson is furiously chugging concussion water as fast as he can, but he remains in protocols as of Thursday. I would say, as of right now, it feels more likely to me that Ripien is the quarterback. The question is, does it really matter? Because Russell Wilson put together some really nice series immediately before the concussion. It was really, I think it was the best he's played all year. But obviously, on balance, he hasn't been that good this year. And I think you can make the argument that going down to Ripien, it seems crazy to say, but it's not that big of a downgrade.
No, it's really not. And I know on a talent basis, it is a big downgrade for Arizona being without Kyler Murray. But Colt McCoy is about as good of a backup quarterback as you could want. You obviously don't want to have him starting multiple games the way that the Cards are going to this season. And, the HBO people must feel very, very upset at their investment to pick the Cardinals as their in-season Hard Knocks team, because, that's just, I guess it creates good drama because it is such a train wreck, but I digress. I feel pretty good about Colt McCoy. This is a tricky spot because the kind of the best unit in this game is obviously Denver's defense. So that could certainly help carry the day for them. But I'm just going to bet on the continued cursedness of the Broncos. And I think that Colt McCoy, he's got a dub in him. And I think it comes through in this spot.
Okay. This is second game in a row where I'll be like, yeah, sure. That makes sense for whatever you could have said there. Obviously the Denver defense has the edge here, but I will say, I thought the Cardinals were the right pick on Monday night. I was on the Cardinals. I actually felt pretty good about it. I thought for at least 2.5 to 3 quarters, they were the better team. I think if, obviously at the end, it completely unraveled. They couldn't stop the run. Colt McCoy's getting sacked every other play. But if DeAndre Hopkins doesn't have that unforced fumble return for a touchdown, there was another defensive score for Arizona that got overturned. Like it really did feel like everything went against the Cardinals in that game, starting with losing your quarterback on the second play of the game. So everybody's down on the Cardinals and for good reason, but we should also be down on Denver. So I'm kind of with you. I think there's more upside, at least with the Cardinals. I think that the Broncos at home, maybe that's a safer play. That's the reason they're 3-point favorites, but I would not be surprised at all if the Cardinals win that game, and I'm on them in staff picks. Those very Patriots that we just saw on Monday night, they are on a short week, staying out west. They're at the Las Vegas Raiders. This game has kind of been bouncing back and forth between a pick'em. We're now seeing the Raiders as slight 1-point favorites at home at BetMGM. Total here, John, 44.5.
So I guess my read on this one, obviously the Raiders are coming off the embarrassing loss, and the Cardinals just kind of had these just awful blunders Monday night, and the Patriots can still make you pay for those, of course. So the Raiders will need to avoid that. I don't think that their offensive line gets folded up the way that, they're going to have to, make sure that Judon doesn't eat them alive. And Josh Uche seems to be arriving as well on the edge for New England. But as long as they keep Carr upright and just kind of keep things rolling with Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs, and I feel pretty good about the chances of the Raiders getting the win here, because I just, at the end of the day, I still feel like the Patriots offense is by and large just a busted operation.
I'm a little concerned about the Ramondre Stevenson situation. He did not practice at all on Thursday. At this point, it would feel like he's probably trending toward not playing in this game. Probably should not have come back against Arizona to carry the ball one time and then re-injure his ankle. I think that would have been maybe the better long-term play to just hold him out, but whatever. Damian Harris was back at practice on Wednesday. He could end up playing. That'd be big for the Pats. This is the stay away of the week for me. I have no idea what's going to happen here. I tend to trust the Patriots infrastructure in these games, and I think the Raiders are similar to the Cardinals in some ways, as far as they're definitely the type of team that could make those killer mistakes, and they did it over and over and over again last time we saw them a week ago against the Rams. So it doesn't really feel like they're coming in hot by any means. And Bill Belichick, by the way, 34-9 straight up, 28-14-1 ATS on short rest over the last 20 years. So going all the way back to 2002. So I don't really know that the short rest here and really the long rest for Vegas, I don't know that it's all that big of an advantage, especially for a Pats defense that I trust to use a football guy term here, out physical the Las Vegas Raiders. John, the last game we have not really touched on here is a pretty huge one in the late window. Titans and Chargers. We have a 46.5 point total in this game. Chargers getting the standard 2.5 as the home team. This is a fascinating game to me. It feels like everybody's back on the Chargers. Herbert played amazingly last week, although still didn't really beat down a Dolphins team that played really badly on offense for most of the game. So I still have my reservations about the Chargers, but I also have reservations against Tennessee. They've lost 3 in a row. They've looked objectively bad for the vast majority of their last 12 quarters. And this is really interesting to me because Tennessee is going to be able to run the ball on the Chargers, but the Tennessee secondary is one of the 3 worst in the league right now, due in large part to all the injuries that they have. So I think these aren't necessarily 2 teams, Tennessee especially, that you would say would be involved in a shootout. But I feel like this is going to be kind of this very unique. One team can run all over the other team. One team can pass all over the other team. And I think we might get a lot of points here.
Yeah, we definitely could. I think you lined that up perfectly. I think there might not be a team that I've ridden narrative street more with than the Titans this year. It's like when they lose to Buffalo, I'm like, oh, they're beyond toast. This is proof. And then they rattle off all those wins. Of course, none of them all that impressive in hindsight or in the grand scheme, but they're winning. They're winning those games, and they got hot. They've obviously hit this cold stretch. I think that they needed this cold stretch because for a minute there, they were starting to get that same type of characterization that they did a couple of years ago, where it's like, get to January, you do not want to play these guys. Now people are jumping off, and I think that means it's the exact right time to jump back on. I think that there's a distinct coaching advantage as far as Vrabel versus Staley is concerned. I don't think Derrick Henry gets shut down. He's obviously the key to the entire offense. If they can get Treylon Burks back, great. Looks like they made a smart draft pick in Chigo Okonkwo out of the University of Maryland, looking good so far. So I think there's enough there on this Tennessee offense to basically match the Chargers, but they can also kind of go ahead and if they have a lead late or if it's tied, I trust the Titans to kind of like just be able to play Derrick Henry ball and get this done. So I like them to win outright as road dogs, and they've been great on the road against the spread this year too.
They have. Vrabel 22-18 straight up as a money line dog in his career. Titans are 21-8 ATS as a dog of 3 points or more under Mike Vrabel. And again, this number has moved down to Chargers 2.5. So that doesn't quite qualify, but still the general point stands that the Titans have been one of the better underdog teams. He's approaching like Mike Tomlin territory, really, when you dig into the numbers as far as teams that you just don't want to play as a dog. So that brings us through the entire Week 15 slate. John, let's run through our parlays, hit our teasers, get our best bets out there, and skedaddle.
All right, let's do it. So we got to keep the afternoon delight parlay. That it's gone 2 weeks in a row now. So targeting that afternoon window of games. These are all against the spread. Give me the Cards. Give me the Titans. Give me the Bengals. That should pay out about plus 596, I believe. So that's where I'm at with my first one, and while you do yours, I'm gonna get the napkin math ready for my underdog parlay.
Okay, I like it. I will throw out what I'm calling my Nick Whalen's not falling for the Jaguars con act parlay of the week. So we will start with the Cowboys covering 4 at Jacksonville. We will add the Bengals covering 3.5 at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we will finish out. We're going to backtrack, I suppose, to Saturday. So it really starts here. Vikings -4 at the Indianapolis Colts. So Vikings got to cover, Cowboys got to cover, and the Cincinnati Bengals have to cover. That gets you to plus 595 over at the Bet MGM Sportsbook. Do you want me to throw out my underdog parlay?
Please.
Okay, so we're doing a nice little throwback here. This is my AFC Central underdog parlay. We got the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Titans money lines. So Ravens got to beat the Browns. The Steelers got to beat the Panthers, and the Titans have to beat the Chargers. If all 3 of those results happen, that gets you to plus 1,013. And look, for old time's sake, if you want to throw the Jags in there, really, kind of complete all the AFC Central underdogs this week, that would bring you all the way to plus 2,851. I do not recommend including the Jags in this parlay. I don't. But if you're an AFC Central loyalist, it is an option.
And, who isn't? Bring it back. Return. I do remember being upset when the realignment happened because the Ravens and Titans back in the day, they had a pretty burgeoning rivalry. And the Ravens and Jags, honestly, had some good back and forth there for a while. And speaking of the Ravens and the Jags, it's just a 2-legger for my parlay this week, that both underdogs, and that pays out plus 496. So not quite as fancy. We're only in the triple digits. We're not talking 10 to 1 or better, or 1,013 to 100, anything like that. But those are the 2 I felt the best about as far as underdogs this week. I do think that the Titans call is a good one, but I didn't want to copy you entirely. And I know the title of your other parlay, but I'm going to be the sucker. The tunnel is painted on the side of the mountain. I'm running right into it with the Jags.
Oh man, is that a Wile E. Coyote reference? Very, very strong.
Absolutely is.
You mentioned those old Ravens Jags battles. It was late earlier this week. I was up later than I normally am. Couldn't sleep. I found myself on Stoney Case's Pro Football Reference page. I don't know how it happened, but it did. I have those moments on the sports reference pages sometimes too.
Stoney Kid, that's like, okay, I got to go to bed. Like I remember like a couple of winters ago, like I woke up in the middle of the night, couldn't go back to sleep. All of a sudden I'm like looking at Ricky Nolasco's ERAs over the years. So like, it's like, is he as good as I thought he was? And then it's like, dude, just go to sleep.
Yeah. I'm like frantically clearing my browser history. Like I'm clearing the cookies, considering just throwing away my computer. It's like, I can't let anybody see this. All right, John, time for the teaser of the week. Our 7-pointer last week was thwarted by the Dallas Cowboys. We also had the Bucks covering 10.5. That went up in flames. Shame on you, Tampa Bay. We're moving to a 6.5-point teaser this week. And if these 3 legs hit, this gets you plus 150. We are teasing the Philadelphia Eagles down to minus 2.5. So they just have to win that game at Chicago by a field goal. We're teasing the Chiefs down to -7.5, build in a little bit of insulation in what could be somewhat of a tricky game against the 1-win Houston Texans. And we're teasing the Buffalo Bills down to a 0.5 point. So the Bills just have to win this game by any score. It could be 100-99. It could be 2-1, if that's even possible. It is not. But the Bills just need to beat the Dolphins. So any qualms with that one?
No, but I just think that key number wise, 7.5 scares me a little bit. But
yes,
like
100%.
But at the same time, it is the Texans. Like I think that worst case Ontario, the Chiefs win by 10. So like that, and therefore they will cover that.
You're exactly right. You should be calling me out on that. You don't in general want to tease teams down to 7 or 7.5. I mean, it's like if there was a 7.5 point teaser option, that would be fantastic. But I didn't think, going up to 7 and getting it to Chiefs -7 really accomplished anything. So for me, it was more about getting the Eagles to 2.5. Kind of had to pick my battles there. But
okay,
Eagles 2.5, Chiefs 7.5, Bills by a 0.5 point. That's what we're looking at there. I would also consider teasing that Titans Chargers total down to 40 if you want to tack that on. Maybe think about it. I do think we get points in that game, as we just laid out earlier. But that is the teaser of the week. You just heard our parlays of the week, John. That means it is time to lock it up. What is your best bet against the spread for week 15?
Give me the Jets -1 at home against the Detroit Lions. I'm a believer in that defense. I'm a believer that Jared Goff will wilt in this spot. Nothing more needs to be said. Give me the Jets. Go green.
Okay, so the Jared Goff wilt pick of the week. I like that one. I'm on the Jets as well. Would like to see Quinnen Williams up his activity, by the way. He had a calf injury last week, hoping he could play for that defense. If he doesn't play, that's huge, but I still do like the Jets. I'm going with the Vikings. -4. We talked about it at the top of the show. This line could easily be a point and a half higher. I understand, a lot of the advanced metrics say that the Vikings and the Colts probably aren't separated by as much as you think. So I get it, but Vikings are at home. I don't really see them getting tripped up here. The defense is a concern, but can the Colts really capitalize on it? I don't know that they can. So I'm locking up the Vikings. You're locking up the Jets. As always, if you're betting, do it on BetMGM. Download the BetMGM app. Go to betmgm.com and make sure you use our promo code BETROTO, BETROTO. Make that first bet risk-free up to $1,000.